This is going to be another entry or topic into the skills that we want to go ahead and reinforce during this quarantine period. So today what we're going to look at is the difference of perfect squares, which is nothing but a technique on factoring a polynomial, okay, or a quadratic. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, the first thing is we need to have some notes or some background. Let me choose another color. Let me use red. Okay, so what this thing says is that if I have a squared minus b squared, so two numbers, it can be any numbers, I can also write this difference as a plus b and a minus b. Okay, notice how a squared and b squared are perfect squares, and by perfect squares I mean it's a number that you can basically rewrite as the multiplication of two numbers that are the same. So for example, like 4, I can rewrite it as 2 times 2, and so 4 is a perfect square because I can rewrite it as 2 squared. Okay, similarly I have 16 that can be written as 4 times 4. 16, the way I can write as a perfect squared is 4 times 4. So 4 squared. Okay, so let me think of an example. Let's say that I have, use color blue. For example, I have x squared minus 9. And for kicks, let's add a 4 here. Okay, so I want to go ahead and rewrite this as two factors. So I'm going to write 2 parentheses 2 groups. Okay, now the first thing this says is that I need to have a plus and a minus in the middle of these two groups. Okay, and the second thing is I want to go ahead and write x here and x here because x times x would give me x squared. Now what are two numbers that are the same that multiply to give me 4? Okay, so as we said, 2 and 2 would give me 4. Okay, and then let's ask ourselves the question, what are two numbers that multiply that are the same to give me 9? So for example, 9 is also 3 times 3, which is 3 squared. Okay, so that would be a perfect squared, and I would put a 3 here and a 3 here. Alright, so now what do? Well, I want to go ahead and check if this expression is equivalent to this expression. Okay, how do I check? Well, I must use our handy box method. So you draw your box. You can also use the distributive property, but we're more comfortable by using the box method. 2x plus 3, and then the other one is 2x minus 3. So what you do is you multiply the corners. 2 times 2 would give me 4x squared, and then 2x times positive 3 would give me 6x positive. This would give me negative 6x, negative 3 times 2x, and lastly I would get negative 9 here. I eliminate the like terms and I get 4x squared minus 9, which is exactly my original expression. So these two factors work. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into one of the problems that are in your assignment. This video is meant to help you in resubmitting and getting a better grade. Okay, so I want to go ahead and factor out this expression, right? 100 n squared minus 1. And I want to write it as two groups. Okay, alright, so the first thing I do is, this looks very similar to the difference of perfect squares, so I need to write a plus and a minus here. Alright, and then since I have an n squared, I need to put an n here and an n here. Okay, now what are two numbers that multiply that are the same to give me 1? So the only option is 1 times 1. Okay, so I put a 1 here and a 1 here. And what are two numbers that are the same that multiply to give me 100? So I can think of 10 times 10 because 10 squared would give me 100. Alright, and that's how I write 100 as a perfect squared. Let me go ahead and erase this. Okay, So I'm going to write 10n and also 10n here. Now my last step is to check. How do I check? Okay, go back to the box method. So I do 10n here and a positive 1 here, 10n here and a negative 1. Okay, so 10 times 10 is 100, the n squared goes there. This is a positive 10n, negative 10n, and this is negative 1. Okay, I eliminate my like terms because they are the same except opposite signs, and I end up with 100n squared minus 1, which is exactly my original expression. Okay, so these factors right here that I just wrote are correct. So what is my answer? It is answer choice number 1. All right, let's jump into another problem, and hopefully we can establish this concept and be really good on our assignment. So let's rewrite our problem. I always like to write it bigger. 4x squared minus 25, and I need to write it as 2 factors. So first thing I do is, okay, it looks like a difference of perfect squares. So now I do a plus here and a minus there. Okay. And next thing I do is, okay, well, I have an x squared term, so I need to put an x and an x on each of these 2 factors. And then, well, I need to find that the perfect square for 4. So for example, what are 2 numbers that are the same that give me 4? We looked at that at the beginning. So 2 times 2 would give me 4, and 2 times 2 is also, so 2 squared. So the only way to write 4 as a perfect square is with a 2. So I put a 2 here and a 2 here. Okay. Now what are 2 numbers that multiply to give me 25 that are the same? So that would have to be, you would have to go through your factors, but 5 times 5 would give me 25. And this is a perfect square. So I put a 5 and a 5 here. Okay. How do I check? Again, box method. Okay, and the more experienced you become in this skill, the less you'll have to check. Okay, but for now, let's just make sure. So we have 2x and we have a positive 5. We have 2x here and a negative 5. So here I'm going to get 4x squared. Then I'm going to get a 10x. Here I'm going to get negative 10x and negative 25. I eliminate my like terms, and I end up with 4x squared minus 25. And that is the same thing as what I started out with. So what are my what's my correct answer choice? 2x plus 5, 2x minus 5. So that would be answer choice number 3. All right. Let's go ahead and do one more, and then hopefully you can have enough practice and more background on this skill so that you'll be really successful. Okay, so again, I have a difference of perfect squares. How do I know that? Because I have one term here, one term here. So I can rewrite this as 2 factors. So let me see. I am going to rewrite my problem. Let me not use green. Let me use purple. So I'm going to do 16x squared minus 81. Okay, and I can write this as 2 groups. Okay, so what are my 2 groups? Okay, so I need to put a plus and a minus here. And next thing is I have an x squared, so I must put an x on both. Okay, so what are 2 numbers that are the same that multiply to 16? So that would be 4 times 4, and that can be also written as 4 squared, and it would give me 16. So how do I write 16 as a perfect squared? It is 4 squared, so I put a 4 here and a 4 here. And I do the same thing for 81. So 81, what are 2 numbers that are the same that multiply to 81? So you go through your factors and you end up with 9 times 9, which is 9 squared, would give me 81. Okay, so I put a 9 here and a 9 here. Last step, well, gotta check, right? So draw your box. Okay, and I'm gonna end up with 4x and positive 9 and 4x and negative 9. 4 times 4 is 16. I have my x times x, so x squared. This would give me 4 times 9 is 36. This would give me negative 36, and this would give me negative 81. And this equals to, cancel out the terms that are alike. And I end up with 16x squared minus 81, which is what I started out with. So these two factors right here are correct. So I circle out my answer, which is going to be 4x plus 9 and 4x minus 9. Okay, so that has to be answer choice number 3. Okay, and don't worry about the order. So this one put the 4x minus 9 first, so this one, and then the other term, this one. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if you switch the order of those two terms. Okay, so let's go and do the other one. Now this one I'm not gonna go ahead and solve completely. I'm just gonna go ahead and set you up. Okay, so here I have the x not at the beginning but at the end, right? But I still have a difference of perfect squares. Okay, so what I want to go ahead and do is rewrite. Okay, so I end up with two terms, two factors, and one of them has to have a plus, one of them has to have a negative. Okay, and since I have two x's, I'm going to go ahead and instead of putting the x on this side, I'm going to put it on the right side because it was on the right side. So I'm going to put an x and an x there. Okay, since there's no coefficient in front of the x, you don't have to do anything. You just basically write it like that. Alright, and then my perfect square for 64, I'm going to go ahead and leave that to you, but essentially you're going to go ahead and put it there. Alright, once you find your perfect square that gives you 64, then you can go ahead and use your box method to prove that what you have is correct. Alright, and then you make your decision on which answer choice is the best. So with that said, I want to wish you good luck on your assignment. Hopefully this video reaches you before the deadline, and I hope you're doing okay. Hope to see you next time.